All right, testing, testing. What about now? Now, okay. Yeah, apologize. Tech issues. All right, here we go. Roy has entered the building. Hey, buddy.
And I'm about to pour a cup of coffee too.
Oh, go ahead. Go get your coffee. We got
Right
a
back.
couple of minutes yet. Yep. So, Anyway, I was talking about SpaceX. Anybody watch the SpaceX almost launch today? I was a little disappointed. Disappointed, but not in shock, because these kind of things do happen. It just felt good. The weather was perfect. There was not a cloud in the sky. The winds were dying down. I mean, it was very low wind. It was perfect. It was like a perfect launch day. And then there was a pressure seal that wasn't working. It was frozen. So they were trying to see if it was going to defrost in time to possibly do it today. Like wait it out. But they decided not to. And I think the new attempt is going to be on Wednesday morning. So bummer. Yes. Sorry, it's cool to watch rockets take off in a big flame and then a big explosion usually. Were you disappointed with the unlaunch today?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, because I would have loved to have seen it, but no, because after the week I had last week, I can't think of any other way I would have wanted to start this week than being out there to see the sunrise over the Gulf this morning. So even without the launch, it was a good way to reset and start the week.
Right. I was just telling everybody, it was a beautiful morning this morning.
Yes.
Very nice. And how you doing, man? We haven't talked in, I don't know, a couple of months maybe?
Probably about 4 to 6 weeks. It was right before you started all the candidate interviews was the last time we had a chance to catch up. I'm doing all right.
How's the city holding up?
The city is holding up well. Always fun things coming on the horizon.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about a couple of them things.
Excellent.
How do you feel? I don't know. Not that you're going to tell anybody which way you're leaning or who you're choosing or whatever, but
depends on the race. But on some of those, I'll absolutely tell you how I'm leaning. On others, I may not.
Do you think the mayoral race is taken already?
No, I think there will be a runoff.
Yeah,
and I think there's still some outstanding questions, especially because of what a certain individual's out there doing to try and run a protest campaign. The question I have is, so if you leave all 4 of the boxes on the ballot blank, but write something in, is that considered a vote in that race when they're not a declared protest candidate? And does it get counted toward the total tally of votes when you're trying to determine what's 50% and what's not? So
see, I heard that there was not even that a write-in was not possible on this ballot.
Well, it's possible for any individual to declare as a write-in candidate, but there's a process to do that, and nobody has done that yet.
So normally,
if somebody had done that, there would have been a blank on the ballot for a write-in. But nobody filed the paperwork to declare as a write-in candidate, so that is not going to be on the ballot. But the question becomes, if a citizen doesn't fill in one of the bubbles for the 4 names listed, but instead writes in a name in that section, what does that do for the count? That I don't know. I think those questions are things that are going to need to be answered before we start tabulating on election day.
Yeah, I mean, if nobody formally applied for that, but people still write it in, I imagine that just doesn't count.
I would think so, but I want to make sure we know what the law is.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yep.
And so that's his form of protest. So we are speaking of Mr. Pat Omada.
Yes, we are.
Who now, what is the reason? Okay, some people don't know. What was the reason for him not being eligible?
Because in 2021, the citizens of Brownsville, by an overwhelming vote, passed term limits. And those term limits now apply. And it is not just future service, and it was not just present service at the time. It includes past service. And it limits you to serving 2 terms as a commissioner and 2 terms as a mayor. So, for example, the reason Jessica Tetrew is not running for re-election as commissioner for District 2 though she's only served 2 years since the term limits were passed, is because the term limits include previous service. So it's not just the 2 years since that passed, it's everything. Anytime she's accrued as a commissioner, makes her ineligible to run for commissioner again.
So just because they don't, sorry to interrupt you, but
right.
So just because somebody doesn't run or loses, and then 4 years later they want to come back and run again, sorry, you had your time already. You're just not qualified.
Say that one more time.
So if someone ran and they had their term, and then they let 4 years go by, they did not run, they were out of politics, and then they decide they want to come back and jump into another mayoral race, you're counting all of his previous time as mayor, so he's ineligible.
Yeah, because he served more than one full term as mayor, he was elected a second time and served some time of that. That means it's not possible for him to serve a full 4-year term. That is why he's not eligible.
Is that the way normally those term limit rules are written? That even if you take a break of politics and you decide to come back 5 years later, you're just not eligible?
No, it varies by city. And that's the thing. Remember, in Texas, you've got, I forget what the first term is. I think it's like a general law city where you're bound by what's in the state constitution and state ordinance. And you've got home rule cities. Brownsville is a home rule city. When you're a home rule city, you have a charter. Your charter is your constitution. And you can write any laws any way you want, as long as they don't conflict with state law and state ordinance. So some cities have term limits where you can serve 2 terms, then you've got to step down, but you can come back later and rerun again.
And run again. Okay.
Yes, but Brownsville, ours say
not like that.
And it doesn't have to be consecutive. I could, like, I'm doing a term as commissioner right now. If I decided not to run for reelection in 2025, I could still come back 2 years later or 4 years later and run for one of the other commission spots and still serve as a commissioner for a second term.
But beyond that,
I would not.
Then it's over. Okay,
that's right.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if, well, obviously there were enough votes to.
It was overwhelming. It was overwhelming support to pass those term limits. And for the folks out there, the question you should be asking is people like, well, I think he should be allowed. Well, then why is it that every other person the law applies to them, but not to him?
Yeah.
Because Dr. Gowan's not going to run for re-election at the end of her term because she's termed out. Jessica Tetry's not running for re-election as a commissioner because she's termed out. So why is that everybody else is respecting the law, but this person says the law shouldn't apply to me? Isn't that what we're all about, is nobody's above the law? But here we have one man saying, I'm above the law. And of course, he's
very defiant on that. He is. Yeah.
What's that?
He's being very defiant and
absolutely
and loud on that.
He could have run for the at-large position. He could have run for the District 2 position. He could have been on this commission and had a vote legally in accordance with our charter, but said, no, I have to be the top dog. I have to be the mayor, and the law doesn't apply to me or shouldn't apply to me. That's unacceptable.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, between us,
okay. Let me make another comment, because I know he posted something about this, because I did file a complaint with the Texas Ethics Commission. And actually, I filed 2 this election season. First, for everybody who's out there who says, well, why is Roy Santos getting involved if he's not even running this year? Because whether it's just as a citizen or as a public servant, we have an obligation to make sure if somebody's not doing things the right way, we call it out. It's not just about what's in it for me or are they hurting me, then I'd leave them alone, let them break the law. No, if we see something that's not proper, we all have an obligation to call it out. And I saw several things this election cycle. For the candidates who it's their first time running, I usually try and reach out to their camps and their campaigns and give them a heads up. And I can tell you there was 2 of the candidates who were first timers ever running, who their signs were not legal, because when you run the first time, of course, it has to say vote for or elect whatever, but so-and-so for, and the office they're running for. So in this case, it would be for commissioner. That word for is very important. We had some candidates who were missing it completely, but also the word for can be no less than half the size of the font of the word of the title of the office.
Right. A lot of people don't know there are very specific rules for making signs and verbiage that has to be on there. including the little disclaimer or the rider at the bottom that says ad paid for by candidate. Right. And what's the other one that you cannot place about where you place
the right of way of a state highway?
Yeah.
So for all the rookies who are new on the ballot, any mistakes that I saw like that, I tried to reach out to their campaign or the people printing their signs and let them know, give them a heads up, they're not in compliance. I know one candidate even self-reported to me that out of all the signs they printed, there was like 4 that were rerun that were missing the state highway right-of-way language, and they had to have stickers made for those. But there were 2 TEC complaints I filed. One was against Pat Ahumada, one was against Commissioner Golonsky, because hers were missing the state right-of-way disclaimer. And again, she's not a rookie. She's an existing office holder. She should know better. Mr. Ahumada, 2-time mayor. He should know better. And it's not about his signs. This was about the fact that his signs were going up, and they said on them, political ad paid for by the candidate, but he had not filed the appointment of a campaign treasurer yet. And that's against the law. You cannot be expending money, printing things, doing things if you've not appointed a treasurer yet.
Yeah, these are the rules that
TC complaint, rookies, I let them know as a courtesy. And it's because, again, I feel an obligation. If somebody's doing things the wrong way, we have an obligation to call it out. If we expect better in our city and we expect things to be done the right way, then we can't just say, well, no, leave them alone, stop picking on them. No, they've got to do things the right way. Everybody does. Law applies to all.
And this discussion tonight isn't necessarily an official discussion, or I'm not coming at you as Commissioner De Los Santos, but
that's why I didn't put Commissioner in my name tonight, because I'm just here as a citizen tonight, so we can talk about anything you want.
So a couple of issues. One, by the way, how is Brian doing on his campaign? How are things going for him, you think?
The feedback in the community is very, very positive. Of course, we learned over the weekend that he received the endorsements from the 3 big unions, the educators, the firefighters, and the police. We're very, very proud of that. And he's working it. He's out there. I think literally every sign that's gone up, or almost every sign that's gone up, he was there to personally put it up. Other than folks grabbing signs at some of his events, I know all the big signs, he was there when they were being placed, and he's still at it. He's still going at it tonight, in fact.
All right, so I know his signs. The other signs that came up, well, not recently. Now it's been a while, but the signs. What's the sign that says something about no strings, no
personal interest,
no personal interest.
It's public service.
No strings. Okay, so the campaign finance reports are out. They came out already. Everybody's filed them. I think everybody's filed them. And so looking through there, and I got to tell you, man, it's for him. It looks like there's plenty of strings attached when it comes, say, between him and yourself. It says no strings. I see strings. No disrespect, but I see strings there. And
the assumption would have to be that if I make a donation to somebody, I expect something in return. And anybody who knows me, and I think you know me well enough, you've gotten to know me over the last 2 years and the time I was running. Have you ever seen me do something and expect something in return for it?
But it's not an unusual assumption. It's not a.
Of course not.
It's not a far-fetched assumption. I mean, most people are going to say, So of course, all the cynics, and I mean, everybody starts talking, and it has come up. It has come up. That's why I'm asking you about it. It just doesn't. To me, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't. It looks.
Whoever was going to be the candidate in this race, I was going to be writing checks for no matter what. They just happened to be Brian in this case, but believe me, there's no strings. He and I have been on different ends of political battles before. Just the races in November, or not in November, but I guess March of last year in the primaries. We were backing different candidates for state senator.
Because it's been said, a vote for Brian is a vote for Roy.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is so crazy. But that's coming from people who don't know me and don't know Brian. And so they just assume, well, he works for him, so he's going to do whatever he wants. And trust me, I've worked with him both in my capacity as commissioner and in other organizations, and in no way, shape, or form are we always an identical vote on everything. That never happens. It's completely different generation, completely different mindset. And that's one of the reasons I like him as my chief of staff because he balances me out. He brings a perspective that I'm not looking at things from, and there'll be times that nope, I disagree. You shouldn't be doing that.
Now, for those who don't know, let's say he does win his position. Obviously, he's got to bow out of your being your chief of staff, or
yes, we've had that discussion.
Whatever the title is. Yeah. So that's I mean, that's a no-brainer.
And I've told him, and I've already got a lead, but I've told him, his last assignment will be finding me a replacement. And I'm sure, just like we did with Brian, whoever I put in the position will likely start with the title executive assistant, because that's what he did for the first several months. And depending on what all they're doing for me in my office and what all I see as far as performance goes, if a title change is appropriate, that'll happen again. If the executive assistant title is it reflects exactly what they're doing and that's the role we keep them in, then they'll keep that title as well.
So I have a question. So there's a lot of newbies, in these races, in this race this time around. And when in the presidential election, when you got somebody with no experience who wins the office, whether it's a Donald Trump or a Barack Obama or whoever it was, because there have been many, they don't know what they're doing when you first get there. There's like a group, there's a team that welcomes you, and they're like, all right, this is what you got to do. You got to do this because of this. You got to do that because of that. And this is how you do this. And this is what you're supposed to say about that. Or does the city of Brownsville have something like that? I mean, some of you guys were, even yourself, if you were new to the politics and to be a commissioner, I mean, how do you know to do? Does anybody take your hand and go, look, come here, let me show you around?
Yeah,
you got to watch a video or a PowerPoint, how to be a commissioner or something.
You've got folks who will do that. There's orientation, there's training. The Texas Municipal League puts on seminars as well. Me, I was a little bit different because I've served on city boards, both in Brownsville and on the city of South Padre Island. I've worked with city departments before in my capacity as a board member at Sombetto Festival. So I had a lot of experience working with city departments and city boards already. So I don't feel like I was completely a rookie when I came in. And I think that's why right off the bat, when representations were being made that just didn't feel kosher, I dug. And I was able to confirm that, yeah, I was being lied to. Things were, whether you call it a lie or misrepresentation or whatever, I wasn't getting all of the facts. And that's why it's so important. And people need to think about this in that perspective also. But that's why it's so important you have someone you can look to and trust, whether it's staff, whether it's a peer, whatever it takes. Because when you had Tino Villarreal on your show and you asked him about Tenasca, now that this audit has come out and you saw what happened while you were on that board, and how do you feel about that? And he said, well, I think the word was incompetent that he used.
He said he felt incompetent. He felt
and
very
that's
bad.
Understandable, but that's the thing is, if you've got a rookie on a board who's out of their element, they need to find someone to trust, and they need to ensure that they're trusting the right people who are going to lead them in the right direction, and not just give them information to try and get them to vote a certain way. And I think that's a lot of what the Carr, Riggs, and Ingram audit showed us, was that information that was being put before the board at PUB and in front of the city commission was not the most up-to-date information, was not the most forthcoming information, and it was most likely presented that way to elicit a specific outcome when it came to the vote. So even if people wanted to say, well, it's a vote for Roy, which one, it's not going to be a vote for Roy if Brian were to get elected. But even if nothing else, if I was one of the people who he was listening to try and guide him, then you ask yourself, okay, would you want someone on staff like John Brusiak guiding Brian Martinez? Or would you want someone on city commission who has fought for employees, who has fought for pay raises?
And I get that. And I get that. But you know the thought,
guiding a rookie.
But the thought is on people's minds. Say, well, Roy's going to lean on him to vote this way or vote with him on all his stuff.
No, and that's one thing I'm proud to say also. So, and I think I've told the story before, where when I came back to Brownsville in 2015, I had no intentions of getting appointed to a board until I heard about the corruption on the Board of Adjustment in the city of Brownsville. And I made it my mission to get appointed there and clean it up. because I chaired that board for the city of South Padre for 5 years prior. And when I got to this board for the city of Brownsville, the problem wasn't just the board, it was the department. None of those people are still there, so that has been cleaned up, I'm very proud to say. Damn it, where was I going with that? What was the last comment you made?
I said people are going to think, yeah, Roy's going to be leaning on Brian for the decision.
So when we were trying to revamp that board, because part of it was we needed to clean up the board. It couldn't just be a bunch of guys who were not because the Board of Adjustment, it's about granting a variance if there's a hardship. And you had boards that were voting to grant variances without even asking, what's the hardship? Is there a hardship? And they didn't even have a clue that that was their job. And it's important in a board like that, because you're talking about applying the law to the rights of citizens, that you've got people who, one, are committed to doing the job the right way and asking the tough questions, but two, are capable of reading the law, understanding it, and identifying what constitutes and doesn't constitute a hardship. And I recruited a lot of the people who were on that board back then. Easily somebody could have said, look, Roy handpicked all those, Roy stacked that board. And to some extent, that probably would be true. But what the people don't know and what they don't see is at no time did I ever contact any one of them about a case that was going to come up before us, or talk to them about how we were going to vote on it. And someone who's one of my best friends, Dylan Vanderford, I was best man at his wedding. He and I would vote opposite directions on some big issues. I think one of his first votes, we were on opposite ends of it. And, there's people who think we're best friends and we're always going to be cookie cutter votes for each other. There's others who think we're mortal enemies, because when we're debating something political or business, we're both using our own judgment, and we're both playing devil's advocate and seeing it from different perspectives. But nobody that I've ever recruited has ever been because they're going to be a yes vote. It's only ever because I trust that they're going to do what's right, and I base that on what I've seen them do in other areas. But Brian is not anybody that I recruited. This was all him, that he wanted to run. He was originally going to wait 4 years, but he was motivated to run now. Self-motivated.
So you're saying Roy wasn't there going, come on, go ahead and run. Do it. Yeah, you should. No.
I love the idea of him running 4 years from now, because I've always said it's almost impossible to beat an incumbent. Unless there's some major heinous scandal, you don't see incumbents lose down here. We've seen incumbents running when they're under indictment and they get reelected. So it's very, very difficult to beat an incumbent. So no, this is not anything that I suggested or urged. I told him he had my full support if he ran 4 years from now. When he told me he wanted to run now, I told him, you've got my support now as well. But this was not a discussion that we had before he made that decision of running this year.
So surely you are seasoned enough to know that, to some extent, the microscope has been on you a little bit, but now is Brian aware that people are going to be watching you guys, trying to watch you guys like a hawk, to see if there's any
and there's nothing wrong with
what we
that.
just talked about.
And as long as it's fact-based, bring the scrutiny, because that's what it should be. We should be held to the highest standard, but just keep it factual. Don't make stuff up, because there's been way too much of that going on.
Understood. That's it's going to be interesting. In reality, being realistic, what do you think his chances are?
Considering the feedback that I'm seeing in the public, the endorsements from the unions, and how hard I see him working, I think he's got a shot. He's going to have to keep working it hard through the early vote and through election day. He's been doing a great job getting out there and meeting people in that district. He needs to keep that up. But I think, considering what we've seen so far with his performance, if he keeps that up and maybe even kicks it up a notch, he's absolutely got a shot. We've seen strange things. We've seen write-in candidates win before.
Yes, we have. And those write-in candidates kicking and screaming about not being there anymore.
Yep.
Not going to mention any names, but we know how that went.
That's right.
What do you think of the other? What about your district? No, District 2. You're in 2. You're in 3. Okay. District 2. Who do you like?
Let's see. How do I want to do this? Like I talked about, people that I know and trust. Linda Macias is someone I've worked with for years because she's been involved with Sombrero Festival. I've seen her work on the BCIC board. So she's someone that I'm confident would do a good job where she elected. So far, Mr. Lopez, I'm just starting to get to know. But so far, everything I see, I like. And I think if he were to get elected, same thing. I don't think I'd have any problems working together with Mr. Lopez. Yeah, that's District 2.
At large.
So there's, of course, it's no secret Susan Rubalcaba and I have butt heads since I was a candidate.
Just a little, yeah.
And I did reach out to her recently. We are going to try and get together and have breakfast or lunch very soon. We both think it's overdue. And I think the holdup before is that because her ethics complaint was pending, it wouldn't have been proper for us to try and sit down because I wouldn't have wanted it to come across as, well, he's only doing this to see if I'll drop the charges. I didn't ever want that to be any type of misconception. Now that that's behind us, I agree with her that, yeah, it's overdue. We should sit and talk. I think we know already going into it, there's going to be a lot of things we won't ever see eye to eye on. And that's unfortunate because I think she's semi-intelligent. My concern with Susan is that I have seen her make comments and say things based on.
So you're talking politically, though. You're talking politically, semi-intelligent, or are you saying?
Well, that's right. Let me quantify that. I think I think she's very intelligent. She's an RN, businesswoman. Yes, all of that. She's an intelligent woman, but I've seen missteps during the campaign, and that concerns me. I want someone, even if we don't see eye to eye, who just like me is going to be about the facts. And I know she's very good about the public information request and getting all of the information and being solid with the data. And I commend her for that. But by the same token, when I see her on a show and she talks about TANASCA and talks about the audit, and they ask her, where'd the money go? And one of her first comments was, well, they built a new building at PUB and they gave the executives raises. There's been a full accounting of the 114 million plus that came in for TANASCA from the rate increases. And it's very detailed on where those monies went, from consultants to lawyers to right-of-way property acquisitions, the fuel subsidy, and the 29 million that's sitting in an account waiting to be refunded to the citizens, plus the interest earned. I have yet to see one report that says TANASCA money went to fund the PUB new building. I have yet to see one report that says TANASCA money went to executives' raises. So it concerns me that she would make a comment like that. I think she knows better, and I expect a little more from her.
Could that be? Could you attribute that to rookie mistake? You know what I mean?
Probably.
First time around.
I can absolutely do that, and I will say, if she were to win this race, she has the potential to be a great commissioner. If she can get over the things like that, if she can get over a few things, she has the potential to be a great commissioner. Now, Tino Villarreal, another one I've gotten to know very well during this campaign. I loved his interview with you. That's someone who had been on that board and clearly was fooled, like everyone was on that board and on the commission at the time, by what data was being put in front of them. That would acknowledge that and wants to do what he can to make up for it. And when he owns it and says, I felt incompetent after I saw that report. The fact that they're willing to admit and own missteps like that goes to character. So I think
Absolutely. That was definitely an answer that it was a response I didn't expect, but I'm glad somebody felt that way, and was very honest about, I hope he was being honest, about how that made him feel. Like, holy crap.
All should feel incompetent, or they should be pissed that they were misled.
Yeah. All right. So obviously, okay, what are your thoughts on tomorrow? Miss Katy Perez is having a little meet and greet out by the mall tomorrow. And Katy.
I know her well. She and I both ran for city commission at the same time back in 2007, not against one another, but that's when
So I'm not going to put you on the spot and say, who are you voting for? I'm just going to say,
I can't vote in this.
Tell me your thoughts.
I can't vote in this.
Well, right. That's true.
I'm not voting for any of them. You can try and nail me down, but I can be honest, I'm not voting for any of them. And I love my team. When I talk about my team and my staff, all of them love to go around telling people, we support him, but we didn't vote for him. But it's because none of them live in District 3. They're all from outside District 3.
There you go.
They believe in me, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I've known Kata for several years now. Our politics are on opposite ends of the spectrum. And I think that's even the wrong way to put it. It's not even opposite ends of the spectrum. I feel like her politics is on one end of the spectrum, and I consider myself a lot more moderate. Because I know progressives won't claim me, conservatives won't claim me, but I'm absolutely a moderate. I call myself a conservative Democrat nowadays, but I chaired college Republicans when I was in college. I was part of the Brownsville Republican Club, and I voted for most Republicans for governor and president for most of my life.
Yeah.
Because at my core, I am conservative. And I know when I ran even as city commissioner, I did not get endorsements from groups like Texas Rising because I would not agree to all of their platform issues, because one of them was defund the police, and not only no, but hell no. Because I'm thinking about it from the perspective of our city, Brownsville, Texas. This is not a place where that should be happening or even be considered. I'm about, if you've got good ideas and good programs that need to be funded, let's look for the funding for those great programs. But it shouldn't be about where the funding comes from. It should be that we find funding to fund good things. If it's about where it comes from, then it's not really about funding the program. It's about taking money away from someone. And that's the wrong motive.
Well said. Okay. What are your thoughts on, you mentioned a couple of the newbies already. One you have not mentioned yet, I'll say, is Jennifer Stanton.
I don't know much about her yet. I've had the pleasure of meeting her a couple of times, but it was always very brief. I don't know a lot about her yet. I've seen her on a couple of podcasts. I don't know that I've heard her mention her platform yet, though. The times that I've heard her talk.
Yeah.
And I did not go to either of the mayoral forums. I missed both of those. One, I was tied up that evening. The other one was during the workday, and I couldn't get away.
Yeah, I'm not. I reached out to her to come on the program, and she was gonna do another podcast with the seafood guy. I'm not gonna say his name right now. And so there's a scheduling conflict. So I'm gonna try to have her on, see if she's going to come on this week. But I don't know a lot about her either. I know she's from the area or from Corpus, I think, something like that. And she used to live here and moved out to Corpus. And
I don't even know that much.
Yeah, that's all that I know anyway. So I'm going to reach out to her and Mr. Lopez one more time. Those are the only two, except for Jessica. I already counted her out. She's not responding at all. And
really, I'm surprised. I'm disappointed.
I am too. And
John came on the show, right?
Huh?
John Callan?
John's been on, yeah. Yep.
Jessica Tetro hasn't?
Nope.
Very surprised.
Won't return the calls or anything. And
that's disappointing. I've always, and I've always spoken highly of this show. And I've told people, if you're going to do one show, this is the one I would definitely do. But there's several great shows out there. I'm glad they're making their rounds on some of the other podcasts.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate your words for saying that. And yeah, I mean, I had planned it to be, for those, whether they like her or don't like her, I was not going to get into that with her. I just want to see where she stands and what she got planned, just like I asked everyone else. But from what I understand, she's not, even though she is visiting, she's not talking to everybody. She's not saying a lot overall in general, I think. And that's where I have a problem. And here you are wanting to be mayor, but you're already dodging some people or dodging some discussions. Is this how you're going to be as mayor also? So that's where I have the problem.
Valid concern if you're not hearing back.
So, and then the other, let's see, we talked about that gentleman.
Thank you to everybody who's offering their condolences for my recent loss.
Yes, I was gonna bring that up. You suffered a loss recently, and you have our deepest sympathies. And you had your services for your dad a couple days ago already.
We had the first service for Dad.
Okay, has he been laid to rest yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
That was a visitation, rosary, but he'll be cremated this week, and then his ashes will be laid to rest at the family ranch in Bayview, which is where my grandparents' ashes are.
Oh, okay. You want to take a minute, if it's okay with you? Tell us about how you and your dad close. You guys were okay. How was it? You and him?
The fact that we're both public servants, that was something we absolutely had in common. Growing up, mom was the one that raised us mostly because dad worked all the time. Mom stayed home with us until both my sister and I were school age. And once we were in school, then mom got a job outside the home. Uh, but those first 5 years, and those are very formative years and are so important, having mom there with us to raise us, that was just huge. And I remember we each had our little school desks at home. We had lessons. We were taught. It was a great environment to grow up in, and I think that's one of the reasons um, I feel I was able to do as well in school as I did. And I know I get complimented a lot on my vocabulary, but by the same token, there's a bunch of haters out there. They're like, well, Roy tries to sound smart and Roy tries to do this. And I'm like, what? Because we're kids from Southmost or kids from Brownsville, we're supposed to sound ignorant all our lives? No. And screw anybody who thinks that. Um, but yeah, so mom was absolutely the largest influence growing up, and the biggest individual who shaped who I became as an adult. Um, I love dad, the work he did with the union, seeing him being an organizer and the business agent for the union. And I remember he used to take me to work with him when he would go out to put up the work assignments for the crews to unload ships the next day at the port. We spent a lot of time at the union hall growing up. And I remember that very distinctly and meeting a lot of the folks out there. And then love you, mom. And then once he was port commissioner, before he was port commissioner, he had been business agent for the union. And after he felt he accomplished everything he wanted to, he stopped seeking that position and just went back to unloading the ships and being a longshoreman and being a supervisor of a crew out there. And me, I was always the ambitious type. So I'm like, what do you mean you're just not doing it anymore? Why aren't you going after higher position or going after more? And his dad was just satisfied and he was happy. And I understand that a lot better now. And it wasn't until the port voted to let in non-union companies. And that was devastating to the union wages, especially in our local economy, because back then you could support a family on what you made as a longshoreman, because everything after 5 p.m. was time and a half. Whether you had your 40 hours in or not, you were already making time and a half. Benefits were good. Everything was strong. And if I recall the numbers correctly, I think the wages went from something like $18 an hour and they dropped to $8 an hour. So make a 50% cut like that is just huge. Yeah. That's what motivated dad to run for the port commission, to make sure he could try and stop any more further losses that they were seeing when it came to the impact of labor. And, he served 12 years on there, and there were some good things that came out of those years while dad was commissioner and Mr. Basteda was there. And I know Mr. Campidano, the current port director, came on board while dad was still on the commission. And
so him doing what he did kind of rubbed off on you a little bit. You saw what he did, and that influenced you to jump in as well.
I was already a leader when I was in kindergarten. I was already
okay
in class. So I think I was always going to go in that direction no matter what. But there were absolutely things that I saw. Like I said, seeing the difference of going on a path because you're ambitious versus just being satisfied and not necessarily wanting anymore. But when you see a call and something inspires you to serve, that's something that definitely had an influence on me. And that's something that I appreciate. And dad was a consensus builder. He was somebody that got along with people. And I know in different organizations I've been in over the years, I try to do the same. And I know some of those organizations, some of the old leadership would tell me, they've watched me and they're like, you're a peacemaker. You try and get everybody to let's sit, let's talk about this, and let's be rational, use good judgment, and we usually all come out to a common conclusion. And that's really true for most of the work I've done outside of politics. Once you're in an elected office, it's a little bit different because there's
I can imagine
more moving parts. And like I've talked about, you see people with the quid pro quo offers, or you see people who make a contribution with an expectation of something.
Right.
I'm proud that when I ran, I made it very clear to anybody who was donating in my campaign, especially if there are people that want to do business with the city. I'm telling you right now, this is not going to influence my vote. Whether or not you get a contract is whether or not you've got the best offer. And it's going to go through procurement. It's going to go through purchasing. They're going to make their recommendations. And yeah, I'm going to vote for whoever's got the best offer for the city. I remember when I ran in 2007, I don't remember the individual, but it was someone had donated to my campaign back in 2007. And then when I was chairing the Board of Adjustment between 2015 and 2020, evidently they came before the board looking for a variance for something they were going to do. And I won't go into the details on the project because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus.
No, yeah.
The variance got denied because we did not see a hardship. And later, somebody else who's a good friend of mine came up to me and they said, "Hey, the applicant, they donated your campaign and they're pissed that you didn't vote for him." I'm like, one, I don't even remember that donation. But two, I said, there was no hardship. And they're like, no, don't worry. I told them they should have come to me first and that I would have talked to you on the side. And I said, oh, no, absolutely not. But I can tell you right now, this is a quasi-judicial board. And if you had reached out to me to talk about that case on the side, then I would have to recuse myself because that's not how I work. It's never going to be about, well, this is a buddy of mine, or this is a guy I know, or this is somebody that donated. No, it's got to be about the law, and it's got to be about what's best for the people of Brownsville. That's all that matters. And I know that there are things after this election that may come to the commission that have been controversial in the past. And I know where I'd likely vote on those, and it would probably be against people that I consider very close friends, but it's just about what's right and wrong.
Does that kind of thing, does that really happen? You know, tit for tat, trying to say, look, do me a favor, here's an envelope.
They try.
On some level, does that happen?
An envelope yet? But there have been 2 quid pro quo offers that I've received since I've been a commissioner. One was verbal, one was written. And both of those, you know, it just leaves a very bad taste in my mouth with regard to the individuals who made those. And that's something that they're always going to be tainted in my eyes because of that. And at least one of the individuals didn't make that mistake again. The other one just keeps making mistakes left and right.
Yeah. Got to do like Elliot Ness did in the days of Al Capone. Somebody came to try to bribe him, and he called his other officers in there, and he said, "This gentleman just tried to bribe me." And he said, "Sorry, you know, we don't play that way."
I don't know if you remember, 2009, Melissa Zamora was elected to the commission. And I knew Melissa because she was the editor of the student paper at UT Brownsville when I was student body president. And I wasn't at that meeting, but I remember hearing about it later, that somebody tried to do that with her. And she called him out during a commission meeting. She's like, "And who's that gentleman back there? Because that gentleman just tried to offer me money in the hallway before we came in to vote tonight."
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, she goes by Landon now, right? Melissa Landon.
Yes.
Okay. That's great. I think that you know what? If people knew that would happen,
we'll like that one.
If people knew that would happen, you may have less of that. Say, yeah, if you hand me an envelope or insinuate something, we're going to call you out and have you explain yourself.
I don't think you'd have less of it, because for every one person who will call them out in public like that, there's probably double that or more that don't call them out and take the money. And that's why it still happens.
Yeah, your mom says, yeah, you started in kindergarten.
And go to the next comment from Mom.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan of Ronald Reagan. I remember that from all of our discussions. Yeah.
And remember, I was a big Union family. The De Los Santos are all Democrats all their lives. So when I came home with a Ronald Reagan bumper sticker on my backpack, everybody was scratching their heads, especially when I'm deep southmost, went to Palm Grove. It's not like I went to some private Republican school or anything like that. But I just loved what I heard from Ronald Reagan, and it inspired me.
Ronald Reagan was a great man. He actually was
a great man. But like all men, he was flawed. He made his mistakes, especially when it came to the AIDS crisis and the gay community. But there were a lot of good things that he did as president. And I loved how he was able to motivate people. He was a great speaker.
So a good segue into the next thing I got for you. I heard that you proposed about flying the pride flag on various buildings here in the city of Brownsville. Is this correct?
And not exactly. We've flown traditionally the pride flag, or we've raised it on June 1st to kick off Pride Month at the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Other than that, there's no big push to fly it anywhere else.
So there's no plan to put it on top of every government building and every school in the city?
That's a great horror story that people love to tell the conservative base to rile them up. It is a complete lie. And yeah, I got a clip. Somebody sent me a clip recently of the Republican Club luncheon that just happened, or the Ladies Republican Club luncheon, where one of the candidates got up there and said, "Oh no, this candidate and this candidate and this candidate, they're all Roy de los Santos people. And if you vote them in, that's giving all that power to Roy de los Santos. And it's all about, yes, let's rally the base by making them think that the gay agenda is going to get reinforced because Roy the Los Santos is going to have all the power. And one of the priorities is going to be rainbow flags at every government building. I'm like, why anyone would ever think that's a priority of mine, considering I've never proposed that in my 2 years in office. I'm like, since I've been elected, we have put up the Brownsville Police Department flag at the Convention Visitors Bureau in May for Law Enforcement Appreciation Month, and the Pride flag in June for Pride Month. And we're always looking for opportunities to honor anybody out there who's worthy of it. You know, I do a lot of work with the veterans communities, and I'm very, very proud of that. And that's something else that I know, like Susan Rubalcaba. She's very active with the veterans group. She's very active with Brownsville PD in their events, in their marathons. And I love candidates who stay involved in the community like that.
Absolutely. So you're saying, no, you're not planning on proposing that the flag be on top of every government building or every school, for that matter, any government entity.
I can tell you that proposal would never come from me because there are so many more important things in Brownsville. But I understand why people want to scare conservatives into thinking that, yeah, there's some gay person that's coming for Christian values and conservative values. There's no bigger lie that could be told.
But you are, at least for June 1st, you would like to see, you are going to have that flag up somewhere.
For May 1st, it'll be the Brownsville PD flag, and for June 1st, it would be the Pride flag, and it would be the Convention and Visitors Bureau like we've always done.
Yeah. Well, I'm done. I got nothing else. That was it. You killed my topic there. So it's like, good night, everybody. No, I know. Yeah, that was the big finale. It's like, oh, Roy wants to put the rainbow, everywhere.
No, that's insane.
And I'm like, I got to ask him about that because I don't think that's the case.
And I can tell you, even when I was first appointed to the LGBTQ task force, there was folks on that board who would get on me also because of my missteps, just as a gay man in the LGBTQ community, because of things that I don't know. And, that's just the way it is. Just the way straight people don't know everything about the gay community. There's gay people that don't know everything about the gay community as well. We're all human.
So since you've been
like, I get credit all the time for having promoted the drag story hour at the library. Well, that was something that happened well before I was ever elected. And I don't think I even knew about it until after the fact. And it was just during my campaign when I was questioned, well, do you think that's right or that's wrong? And I'm like, I think they've got the right to do that. And if you want to watch, you watch. If you don't want to watch, you don't watch. It was streamed online. It wasn't like the doors were locked and everybody was forced to listen to a story from a drag queen. It was everybody could choose to log in or not log in. That's all it was. But because of that, because I didn't condemn it, suddenly it was Roy promoted. And then I'm like, that's just a lie. But again, that's what riles up the base.
That's the liberal way.
The torches, let's go get him.
Right?
Like I said, tell the truth to people. And if you want to come for me, come for me. But stop making up lies, because if you've got a lie about who I am to get people to hate me, then clearly I'm not a bad person. The people who make up the lies are the bad people.
This legend here says, if anyone actually knows Roy, they would know he is more into helping the city as a whole and won't put his personal ideas first. He's loud and proud, but respectful.
And on the proud point, I want to say this also, because that's another lie being told by some vicious, we'll say woman, because I'll be nice, in the community, who's saying like Brian and I, that we'll go and we start deleting everything that looks gay from our social media profiles, because now that everybody's looking, we're ashamed of it or we're going to hide it. No, absolutely not. I would gladly flipper the bird right now, but I don't want to do that and get your show kicked off of Facebook or anything. But yeah, anybody that's going to go out there and say that I'm trying to hide who I am ever, or the same thing about Brian, we are very, very proud of who we are as members of the LGBTQ community, like so many others are, and we're never going to be hiding anything. And it doesn't matter what kind of scrutiny comes out on social media or what the issue is. I don't change how I vote because of public scrutiny, and I don't hide who I am because of public scrutiny. I'm an open book.
So when did you, the LGBTQ task force, when was that?
I believe it was 2019 when it was created, the resolution passed, and then early 2020 is when people were being appointed to it. And the first round, they appointed 6 out of the 7 because the commissioner from District 3 was not at the meeting that night. And that was the first I'd even heard of it. When people were getting appointed, I'm like, what is this? And people told me about it. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then when I looked at, okay, District 3 is vacant, and I looked at who the applicants were. There was one applicant who's someone I know in the community. I don't think they're part of the LGBTQ community. I think they're an ally. There was one other individual, and I'm like, oh, absolutely not. That's not somebody I would want representing me from District 3. So I reached out to the commissioner and I said, Commissioner, I know this vote is coming up. I'm hoping you've got somebody in mind. If you don't, I'm willing to serve. And I said, I've got more than enough boards already. And I didn't mean city boards. I just meant other boards. I'm like, I don't need another one, but this is important. And I am willing to serve if you don't have somebody already in mind. And the commissioner said, no, I can't think of anybody I'd rather have in that spot than you. So I was picked number 7. So I was one of the 7 charter members of that group. And that was, I think it was April 2020 that I was appointed.
Being a someone who's out and very public about who you are and what you are, how have you seen the LGBTQ community, at least down here in Brownsville, over the last few years? I remember when there was talk about this task force, it bothered me because I'm thinking, what's going on so horrible? I haven't heard about it. Why do we need a task force for this? And then I started hearing things about, well, there's certain violence against some of the LGBTQ here and there and this and that. And how do you think things are going for the city of Brownsville when it comes to, everybody's saying now, inclusion?
It's going better. I think for the LGBTQ community, it's going much better. And where someone would say or would refer to it as the community's growing, I don't think the community's growing. I think people are just more comfortable coming out and being who they are because it is a more welcoming environment in Brownsville. By the same token, the more comfortable people become being themselves and just living their truth, the more it pisses off other people and the louder the hate gets as well. So that's something we've got to balance. And I know I gave a speech just last week at an event downtown about that. And I talked to especially the younger generation that was there. And, that's an important topic, and not necessarily just drag shows and the younger generation, but the younger generation in general, whether it's a gay event, drag event, whatever. Why it's important, it's not about grooming children. It's not about grooming the young minds. It's about ensuring they're getting both sides of it. Because if nobody says anything or does anything, it's very easy for them to be groomed and indoctrinated into hate and intolerance. And then by the time they're adults, all they've heard is one thing, that's wrong. You shouldn't do that. You're going to go to hell if you do that. That's what creating these spaces is about. It's just that finally you've got a space where you can talk about it if you want. And people are like, well, nobody's thinking about that at that age. And I think I've said on this show before, I kissed my first boy when I was in kindergarten. So yeah, I was thinking about it at that age. When I was 5, when I was 6, I was thinking about it. I knew I liked him. And it's not that every kid needs to have a discussion about whether you're gay or straight, but there should be spaces that are safe if someone wants to have the discussion. And that's all it's about. When any event happens where it says all ages are welcome, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to be that their mom's bringing them, or their dad's bringing them, or their aunt, or their uncle, or somebody. They're with an adult. But
so does that mean that how do you feel about?
Sometimes a parent doesn't know how to have that conversation because the parent's new to it also. And it's helpful to the parent who has a kid who's part of the LGBTQ community or thinks they might be part of the LGBTQ community to talk to other parents and other folks and get some insight, get some perspective, and then be more comfortable having those conversations with their own kids.
And that's why I think it's important to have a line of communication with your kid saying, you know what?
Yes.
No matter what happens, whatever, doesn't matter what it is. When you have a question, you come in and you ask or you talk, and let's talk about it. I think nobody knows their kid more than the parent, and I wouldn't want somebody else talking to my kid about sex or any of that stuff, or LGBTQ, anything. I think a parent should figure it out with their child. I think only they know when the right time is. and I don't think somebody should introduce it just because it's at school, it's at 3 o'clock at school, everybody's got to come and do it. It's like no.
Yeah, it should never be mandatory. Like I said, there should be spaces where it's safe to be able to have the conversations, but nothing should trump the parents' rights. But by the same token, we also know those families, and I've got friends who have been on their own since they were 17, 18, because once they came out, their parents disowned them. Their family threw them away.
Yeah.
And that same thing is they need a place to go. They need to know that they are loved and they are welcome. And even if their mom and dad don't accept them for who they are, even as adults, even at 18, 19, 20, 25, your family still won't accept you because you're part of the LGBTQ community. You need to know that you're not alone.
This one's from Legend for You. Sorry that she couldn't make it to the, okay.
And that's okay. I know a lot of people couldn't make it, but just the outreaching with the condolences means a lot. Thank you.
So Bam and I had this discussion. I don't know if we've touched on this before, and not to make this a whole LGBTQ discussion. It hasn't, but Bam and I think the same way. And I grew up in the LGBTQ neighborhood, so I'm not against it. I grew up with it. It was all around me growing up. So to me, they're just, like my mom said, don't judge them. They're just people like everybody else.
Exactly.
But back then, and by back then, I mean when I was growing up, they wanted to just leave us be. If you know, or if you find out that I'm gay, okay, but just leave me alone. Let me live my life. Exactly. But now it's turned into something different, like a little more in your face radical. Like people want to push it in your face, and
that's a misconception. And
you think so?
I'm glad you said that. Because, and I'm not wearing any of my stuff right now, but anybody, usually you'll see my bracelets that I wear, and they've got chakra beads that are rainbow colors. But one of the things you'll also see is I almost always have a ring with a cross on it. Neither one of those is about shoving my faith, my Christianity, or my being Catholic in anybody's faith, and neither is my bracelet or anything else that I do. It's about, I'm proud of who I am and I'm comfortable with it. And it's the same, by the same token, when I drive by a church and there's a cross out there on the steeple, that's not anybody trying to shove religion in my face. That's, if anything, that's a beacon. So that if that's what I'm needing spiritually, I know this is a place I can go.
Well, I don't mean rainbow stuff, things like that, the t-shirts or the head, whatever. I don't care about that stuff.
Right.
It's more, I guess it's more about, the whole pronoun thing, and people, they're trying to force us to call them they or all these weird pronouns. That's where I have a problem.
Confusion with pronouns, but let me put it this way. Let's say you were at work, and let's take the LGBTQ out of it. And somebody came up with a nickname for you, and somebody said, "Hey, Brownie," because your skin is brown. And they call you Brownie, and they call you Brownie. You're like, "Excuse me, my name is Manny. I'd like to be called Manny." I mean, one, that's your legal name, but two, that's what you prefer to be called. Or even if you had a nickname and you said, "I go by, Mr. Mike," or whatever it is. It's just about, are they going to treat you like crap and call you what they want to call you? Or are they going to at least be respectful that you prefer to be called Mr. Mike?
In case you didn't know, also, I'm a self-proclaimed coconut, so those kind of things don't really bother me.
No, and that's good.
Me personally.
But again, it's the question, the environment is, should anybody you work with, whether it's work, whether it's school, whether it's wherever, should they be able to call you whatever you want when that's not what you call yourself?
I think, and I think this is more of how a person was raised, is that you are polite and kind to people. Don't call somebody out just to embarrass them.
Right.
You're having a pizza at a restaurant and, hey, look at that dude over there. That's not a lady. That's a dude. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, sir. Come over here for a minute. That's all stupid stuff.
Right.
If somebody is legitimately trying to live as a female, I've done it. I worked for the airline before, and this happened a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And we would say, yeah, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Even though we knew it was a guy, we just, yes, ma'am. And it was, I don't know. I see it. I think people.
It's the difference between if you accidentally said yes, sir, or if you just said, no, I'm going to call you sir. I'm not going to call you ma'am.
Oh, that happened one
People
time.
make mistakes, and that's understandable. And I've done it where I use the wrong pronouns for people. And yep, my buddies are like, dude, you're not supposed to say that. They identify as, and I'm like, I understand. It's an adjustment. It's absolutely an adjustment. But it's not about, and I understand why it seems like they're forcing this on us, but it's no different than he doesn't go by that name. He goes by this name. You know, I've got family members who legally changed their name because they didn't like their name. They didn't want to go by that. And this wasn't even a gay family member. This was just a family member. And it's again, are you going to say, no, that's not what your parents named you, so I'm not going to call you that? Or are you just going to be respectful and say, oh, you go by this now? Okay, I respect that. It's that, and that's all it is. It's just about respecting one another. I know
I think
it's different and it's new and there's some growing pains with it, but it's no different than somebody just changing their name legally versus saying, I don't go by he, I go by she.
Do you believe in the government compelling you, like by law, to have to call people by their pronouns?
I don't think it should have to come to that, but by the same token, I don't think if you're in a position of authority or power, you should abuse that by saying, no, I'm going to call you what I want to call you. Whether it's about their pronouns or whether it's about the color of their skin, a person in a position of power authority should not be abusing it by saying, you don't tell me what I call you what I want to call you.
I mean, I'm thinking, you know, if the person comes up to you and says, well, call me she, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to call you she. I'll just call you by your name, which whatever his or her name is. But some people really push this thing about using their pronouns. And I think it's getting way too out of control where it's just now it's giving the original intent a bad name.
Oh, and I get that. Yeah. And that's part of the opposite end of the spectrum. You've got people who just want to beat folks over the head with it. And I'm like, that's not how you help people understand and get people to the point where we're just talking about mutual respect. Because you can't just beat people. You can't beat people over the head with it. And it's like if you went back to the Civil War or whatever, you can't say, well, I'm going to put you in the room with 12 people that were slaves, but now they're freedmen until you learn to accept it. That's not how acceptance comes about. And it is a transition and it is a process.
I think less is more. If it would be more, let us live our lives, and kind of everybody would just quit talking about it for a while.
Well,
Morgan Freeman
is you want everybody live and let live, and you and I are of the same mindset of that. But like you say, when you've got somebody at the airline who identifies as a woman, you're going to say yes, ma'am, because that's you. You're a considerate person like that, and I would do the same thing. But it's when you've got the people on both ends, where you've got someone who wants to break your balls if you made a mistake with a pronoun or with a name, and just treat you like a complete villain, even though it was an honest, innocent mistake. They shouldn't be vilifying you like that for making an honest mistake. And by the same token, you shouldn't have the person authority trying to belittle someone and say, no, I'm not going to call you what you want to be called. I'm going to call you whatever I want to call you.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all it is. That's why whether it was sex, whether it was race, whether it was color, whatever it is, it's just about mutual respect for one another, and respect that everybody's a little bit different. Everybody lives their lives differently. And because this is something new to us, it's a growing pain, but it's no different when we had immigrants coming to the US from other countries. Maybe we were used to immigrants from certain countries, but now we've got a whole new base of immigrants coming in. Well, we don't understand their cultures and their customs. It's going to be a learning process for us. And again, there needs to be understanding on both sides that it's a learning curve for us. We're not trying to be disrespectful, but hey, I don't know.
Yeah. I made a mistake once with a lady. You know, she was lesbian. She was a female, but very masculine and all that. Mm-hmm. And I said, yes, sir. And first, I felt bad. But then I thought, and she told me, she goes, thank you. I said, that's what she wanted to be called. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, no, you're good. You did it right, she said.
Once you realized you used a term that she preferred or he preferred.
I was like, that's funny. I mean, I was like, I'm worrying about it. And, you know, that's.
No, and I remember before I'd walk, you know, sometimes downtown, and I'd walk past folks, but I wasn't sure. I knew they were gay. I knew they were part of the LGBT, or they were trans. I knew they were part of the LGBTQ community, but I didn't know if they identified as men or women. And I'm like, And I remember one time I said, "Good evening, ladies." And afterwards I thought to myself, I don't know if they identify as she.
Do you, real quick, a quick fact: the civil rights movement, the civil rights era, 50s and 60s, everything you see on TV, uh, photos, magazines, newspaper clipping, everything, all the black and white photos. They intentionally made every photo black and white when originally those were all color photos. There was color film then. All these things were done on color. Color photos, color film. Why did they black and white everything, and whose idea was it to make everything you see about the civil rights era black and white?
Now, how sure
I found that out. I found that out last week by some not last month. I mean, in February during Black History Month.
I'll do some research on that because I want to vet that. That's interesting,
right? That was interesting. I was like, yeah, why would they do that? And I wonder if it was with some kind of not evil intent, but some kind of nefarious intent.
Yeah. First, let's vet it and verify that it's accurate, and then let's think about intent.
Yep. Last thing, related but unrelated. Do you know who Dylan Mulvaney is?
Yes, I don't think I'd heard the name before, but I did not know until the latest controversy.
Yeah. And so I'm going to stand up for some trans people and say, I don't consider him trans. I consider a person trans who's actually transitioning and going through psychological stuff, going through physical changes and injections and medication and vitamin or what, all that. And somebody really trying to what's called transition. To me, that's a trans person. Somebody who just dresses like a woman, and to me, that seems like a marketing thing for himself to be, I don't know, an actor or something. I don't know, but you have no idea what it is to be a woman. Even if trans people, the real down to earth ones, they know they're not a
But
female.
Dylan has completely transitioned, hasn't she?
He has all his parts, not taking hormones, not doing any of that stuff, just dressing the part. And now
I've got to do more research because I thought this was like the 1 year anniversary of having transitioned.
He's calling it transition, but there's no transformation. It's just dressing the part and living that part for a year.
Oh, I don't know. I've got to go look into that.
Getting deals from cosmetics and the female tampon period items and stuff like that. Being the spokesperson for all that. It's not a woman. It's like, come on.
And you're sure that she's not transitioned?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Pretty positive. I remember hearing about that. Hasn't started anything at all yet.
I'll have to research that.
Even friggin' Nike gave her a contract. See, I'm calling her. Gave her a contract for sports bras and women's athletic gear. And to me, I don't know. And on behalf of women, it's like it's insulting. It's like get a real woman. Get a real woman who knows what it's like to be a woman.
Community is still also a market. Whether you're talking about marketing to biological women who are born biologically, or whether you're talking about the gay community, the trans community, whatever community, you've got markets of buyers. And what's wrong with a company that sells a product saying, I want to market to the trans community and the female community and the male community? What's wrong with that?
Okay. So I'll be a little more blunt. If you're going to have somebody sport a bra, make sure they have something that needs supporting. And so when they wear it, Dylan's got nothing. He's a man. He's completely man-chested. Anyway, I just wanted to see what your opinion on that was. Dylan has not transitioned at all.
Dylan, but as far as like the latest controversy, whatever Dylan considers their truth to be, and if Budweiser wants to say, hey, a salute, congratulations, what's wrong with that?
Chuck, what am I wrong about, Chuck? Tell me.
Because tell me. I've had folks who they were like my mortal enemies when I was running, and they were big supporters of my opponent, and we've since become very good friends. And they've told me, well, you know what? Yeah, I'm an ultra conservative. I'm a Republican. I'm precinct chair, the whole 9 yards. They'd probably vote for Donald Trump if he ran again tomorrow. But they're like, but now the Christian women are ostracizing me because I consider you a friend. Because they expect he's supposed to hate me because I'm gay, and because he's not ready to lynch me, then now he must be ostracized by Christians. I'm like, that is freaking ridiculous. Like, he's the same conservative he always was. He just got to know me a little bit more and realizes I'm not the monster that they lied to him about, told him I was.
Mm.
And now we have a mutual respect for each other. I've been over to his house for lunch with him and his wife a few times. But no,
Well, there you go.
Right-liners that are like, oh no, Roy's gay, you have to hate him. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's not cool for sure. But Roy, listen, I appreciate you taking some time. It's been very interesting. And in case anyone missed it, Roy is not trying to color the city with the rainbow flag, except for perhaps a few days in June for Pride Month.
At one location, like we've always done.
One location, not every government building on the planet in Brownsville.
Nope.
So
but I love that people waste their time making up lies like that, because yeah, if they're that scared of one gay person who's actually fighting for good things for the community, that has the support of veterans and unions and people and city employees, that's what threatens you. That's a shame.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, that's one reason that I asked you to come on, just so you can, because I know you're good for clearing things up and telling it, hopefully, how it really is. And yeah, and I hope people just quit saying that you're trying to, I'll say it, gayifies the city.
They're never going to quit saying it. They will never quit saying it, because that's the best soundbite they've got to rile conservatives against me. Is they don't want to look at my record.
Jessica says Commissioner Roy does the same thing to Susan. Members of the LGBTQ often come after her, calling her names and all our lies. But that's not. Are those people who just are hardcore LGBTQ coming at her? That's not you saying she's this or she's that, is it?
Oh, no, I've said before I consider her homophobic, and I think she does not want to be homophobic and does not believe she's homophobic, but there are things she does that absolutely. And, you know, and we called this out recently, where when I ran for office, she would come to events I was speaking at, and the one issue she would raise was the pride flag and the task force. Nothing about infrastructure, transparency, city streets, nothing else, nothing that was part of my platform. It was pride flag and task force. So, I mean, and again, I've been in the community for so long, I hadn't done anything to rainbowize the city before, but that was the talking point. And again, I'm working to get to know Susan better. And like I said, we're not going to see eye to eye on several things. But there's little things that, and I'm probably guilty of the same thing. There's little things that I probably do or say that I don't realize that I'm doing that may come across as offensive to people. And I think the same is true with Susan, that she doesn't realize why it would be seen that way or perceived that way. It's not because she disagrees with me, Jessica. It's because when your only issue is gay issues, it's not about disagreeing with me. And then the same thing, one of Susan's biggest talking points was, the problem I have with the pride flag is that flying it at a city building implies that everyone agrees. And that's not the case, so we shouldn't be doing it. So let's assume for 1 second that's 100% true. But then by the same token, that also means that flying the flag for Mexico, well, everyone agrees with that. That's why we're flying Mexico's flag. And we know that's not true. We know there's a lot of Americans that don't think Mexican's flag should be flying, but nobody's bitching about the Mexican flag. Texas flag, some people would say, well, no, we should be the United States. It shouldn't be loyal to the state, it should be loyal to the country. Why are we flying a state flag? So not everybody agrees that the Texas flag should be flying, but nobody's complaining about the Texas flag. They're only complaining about the pride flag. Last year, we flew the Brownsville PD flag during Law Enforcement Month, Law Enforcement Appreciation Month. I know even within the gay community, I got crap from people saying, why are you honoring law enforcement when Uvalde had just happened? And I said, because I absolutely support our law enforcement, especially here locally. Susan didn't complain about us flying the Brownsville PD flag. So she's not complaining about Brownsville PD flag, not complaining about the Mexican flag, not complaining about the Texas flag, but she's complaining about the pride flag.
Well, one would argue because the city flag is the city which is in the state of Texas, because the Texas flag. The state of Texas is within the United States of America. That's why there's it's underneath and it's to the position of honor. Everything's to the right of
But the argument was
left of the flag.
Flying it applies. Everyone agrees, and that is not true. So you can't make that argument about the pride flag, but not make that argument about every other flag that we've flown. Because if you can find one person in Brownsville that doesn't agree with any of those flags, then that means they shouldn't be flying. If that's your argument. If it's not just about it being the pride flag in the gay community, if it's about unless everyone agrees we shouldn't fly it, then why is it just the one flag that's getting attacked?
Do you think gay issues get special treatment?
No, we're trying to get equal treatment and fair treatment, but people want to frame it as, they're getting extra rights and special rights. No, we're getting the same rights afforded to every other American under the Constitution. That's it. It's just we've stopped being willing to be discriminated against and say we don't get rights because we're gay. All we're doing is saying equal, same rights as everybody else gets. There's no special rights for gay people.
And she also says then we need a religious task force.
Lobby for one. If you lobby for one, there's no reason you shouldn't get one. But don't bitch about not having one when you've never taken the initiative to say we need this. And why is it you say you need it now? Because the gays have a task force. So yeah, that's really a compelling argument. Try again. I mean,
that does look bad.
Brownsville, do you see religious persecution?
See, and I've got my own questions and reservations about religion that have come up in the last few years of my life, where I just question a lot of things. But I swear, I would like to think that if God or Jesus came down to 2023 right now, he'd be saying, don't be hating on anybody.
Exactly.
Everybody, let them live their life. And yes, I don't agree with this part of it or that part of it, but be kind to everybody. Don't be like this to them. I can't believe he would say, strike them all or whatever, or
exactly.
I don't believe that.
Exactly.
I can't believe that.
And
I won't believe
you feel it inside because you know it.
Yeah.
It's just about the difference of knowing right from wrong.
And like you said, and if someone's only reason for doing a religious task force is, well, that's because of the LGBTQ task force, so now we got to have a religious task force just for that reason, then that doesn't hold any water.
Put up her comment right there about they get a whole month and a task force. Put that up.
Where did it go? What did I miss here?
It's 3 up from the bottom.
They get a whole month and a task force, yet they don't get special treatment.
So let's talk about all the other boards we have out there, from the Special Needs Advisory Board. We've got boards for Veterans Affairs. We've got organizations like AARP. It's any group that feels like they're not getting the attention they deserve is asking for equal rights and care from the government. That's all it is. And so, yes, the gay community, feeling like there was a need, is doing the same thing as every other one of those groups. And, we could name countless of them out there. That's all it is. So no, it's not special treatment. It's the same treatment any other group out there has asked for and has received. That's it. But everybody wants to make us villains for saying, like, look, they get a whole month. I mean, there's breast cancer month, but that doesn't mean with breast cancer getting special treatment. That means we are recognizing them. That's it. It's not about special treatment.
And you can take this so many places because there's Black History Month.
Exactly.
The Mexicans don't get a whole month. They get 1 day out of
Harvest Day. That's right.
They get Cinco de Mayo 1 day, and that's for a particular specific state in Mexico. And then there's Mexican Independence, which I think is September 15th or 16th, I think. But it's just a day. How come they don't get a whole month? How come we don't get a whole month? And I don't know. I haven't heard people bitching about, hey, how come Mexicans don't get a whole month?
Exactly.
And
no, trust me, somebody will say it.
Yeah, right. When he called the flood back in the day, he did say strike them all except for a few.
And remember, Sam, those of us who are here today were part of that few, so that means he spared the gays.
There you go. See, and that's why I started questioning certain things about religion.
Of course. I
'Cause
taught
it
catechism for
can't
3
be.
years. I taught catechism. It was the prep year before confirmation because I was never certified to teach a sacrament. Uh, but I love being able to talk to kids and about the Bible and about how we apply that to our lives today. Because that's the thing is you can't just talk about, well, 2,000 years ago, God did this and said this, and this is what happened. You've got to help people understand what that means in our lives today and how it should guide us in our lives today. Yeah, there is Hispanic History Month. That's true.
There is?
Yeah.
What month is that?
Uh, is that
Yvette
the one
says September 15th to October 15th.
it straddles 2 months. That's right.
So it's not a month. It's just like a 30-day period or whatever.
Technicalities.
And I remember Chris Rock talking about Black History Month. He goes, they gave us the shortest month and the coldest month. and I never thought of it like that, but that was pretty funny.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know. I think, why, and it didn't. I didn't even know when Pride Day or weekend turned into Pride Week, turned into Pride Month. I don't remember when that happened, how many years ago or what decade that was. And probably because I lived there in that neighborhood forever. For me, it was gay day every day. I mean, that's where I lived in Chicago. So all this
a whole month. And I can tell you when I joined the task force and maybe even or slightly before that, they talk about the Stonewall riots. Honestly, when I first heard the term, I thought it had something to do with Stonewall Jackson. I had no idea what the Stonewall riots were. That kicked off Pride.
You can speak about religion if you don't know or read the Bible. I used to read the Bible a lot. I was deep in religion for a long time.
That I read and I talk about frequently with friends.
And I can't believe that he's a hating God.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why, like I said, I've always, when I'm wearing my rings and my jewelry, I've always got a ring that has a cross on it.
Robin, you're white. You get 9 months out of the year, so don't even talk. Don't even talk, buddy. Hi, Lola. Fly your flag of choice at home or business, American flag. Okay, so since we're on this topic.
Wait, no, leave that topic up or leave that comment up because I want to get the tail end of that also.
This one here or the next one after
that? That one.
Fly your flag of choice at home or business, American flag on the government building. A lot of vets will fight on that.
Yeah, and a lot of those vets were gay. There were a lot of gay vets. And remember, there were also trans people serving in the military who got kicked out by a former president. And I can tell you both of my grandfathers and a lot of my cousins who are veterans will tell me, no, Miguel, I fought for your rights to be yourself.
But do you think gay veterans, gay military people really are concerned about putting the gay pride flag on top of government buildings?
No, I don't think that's anybody's agenda.
I don't even think that's an issue, right?
No.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's nice to have it for Pride Month to put it up. And again, like one place in the city, that's not about turning the whole city. It's not about Pride flag 365 days a year.
If everything you mentioned is because of our heritage or an honorable service to our country, not because of ideologies that have become political.
Now, see, and that right there, that's debatable because you call it honorable service to our country, but I guarantee you there's a lot of people like when people who serve this country are getting deported because they're illegals, there's folks that don't consider it honorable. When people got discharged because they were gay, they didn't consider it honorable, even though they were willing to risk their lives, just like all of the straight soldiers were. So that's just your opinion.
You know what? That is a good point. If you volunteer to get killed or get beheaded in Iraq, then you get a pass on everything.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I love when we had the Vietnam Veterans event at the park this last week, and Congressman Vicente Gonzalez talked about that's one of the things he's fighting for is every one of those who's been deported, who served, he wants to bring them back. He wants them home. And that is admirable.
Special treatment for gay. Tell that to those that do bodily harm to them. Yeah, this is true. The Quran, what Bible? Mr. Roy Dos Santos, a great show. Manny needed some help. Just kidding, man.
No, Manny's always good solo, but I love it when we're together.
I think the issue that is rising is that lots of these ideologies is being pushed on our youth, and that is what we draw the line. Okay, I do kind of agree with. I think they're trying to, and it's not regular gay people. I think there's these radical, I don't know what you call them, activists or whatever you want to call them, with this agenda, and I think they do want to introduce sexuality way at a way too young of an age. That's what I think.
First, yeah, and I object to the word pushed. It's not being pushed on them at all. But again, it's about, like I said, I kissed my first boy at 5. Where was my space if I wanted to go and talk to somebody about it? And people like this are saying nobody can talk to you about it. Nobody can talk to you about it because you're 5 at the time. And that's the problem, because that is what was being pushed back then, is I did not have a choice. The spaces did not exist to even be able to have a discussion because of people like that. And they want to keep it like that if someone is out there who's 5 or 8 or 10 or 12, they want to say, no, they're a minor. They can't have a space where they can go and talk. They can't have a space where you can have this discussion because we say they're too young to do that. They don't even want the parents to have the decision of, yes, that space is available. I want my kid to go and have that conversation at 8 years old. Why is it we're taking away the parents' rights there when everywhere else we're arguing the parents should be the ones that have the final say? Because when you say the spaces cannot exist for minors, you're taking away the rights of those parents of gay children who might want that space for their kid. And that's why STEP and these other groups, they're not trying to push anything on anyone. They're just trying to create spaces where if there's somebody out there who wants to have a conversation, they can safely without being judged. And again, if their parents bring them, if their parents need to have a conversation, the parents have a place where they can go and talk to other parents and understand.
I think some parents have an issue because I think some parents don't want to deal with it, and they're okay with the teachers. You want to talk about it with them? Go ahead, do whatever. And I think that's the problem. I think where did that problem come from? I don't know. It's just a problem where it's traditional, old school family is not there anymore.
It's foreign territory for them, so they wouldn't even know how to start that discussion, what to say, how to have it. And I think to some parents it would be easier if someone had that discussion with the kid. I mean, you can't tell me that every parent out there is the one who teaches their kids about the birds and the bees. And you can't
tell me
there aren't parents out there who are relieved that the kid already had the discussion with somebody else. That way they don't have to go through that. It's no different.
You're probably right. You're probably right. Different. I could hear the parents right now. Man, I'm glad they're doing this at school because I don't want to talk about this with them, and that's terrible. It really is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, a lot of opinions. And we could, if I didn't have to work tomorrow, this is headed to another one of those 3 or 4 hour shows right here. It really is. It really is. We may have to have a part 2 on this one at some point.
Absolutely.
But I am gonna have to cut it short here. Roy, as usual, thank you for coming. I do appreciate you.
Always. I love our conversation.
Really do.
Very intellectually stimulating.
And I said this before when you started coming to the show all the time. The other commissioners should be so available, should be so willing to just come up. Yeah, let's just talk, whatever. I don't care. Mm-hmm. You tell me how you stand and you stick with it. At least you're speaking, your heart and what you feel.
Right.
And you shouldn't be afraid of discussing anything.
Exactly. And I remember you told me you caught some flack from folks at the beginning because they expected you as a conservative host were just going to tear me apart. And then you realized this isn't a bad person. This isn't a bad guy. And he's actually wanting to do some good things for the city, and he's honest and transparent and answers questions. And we don't know
everyone
issue, but it's always
everyone should be as transparent and open as Roy. The other commissioners, all of them, should make the time and make themselves available and say, let's talk about whatever. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a city government only discussion, but This is how you get to know someone.
Exactly.
This is how you get to know someone, and you get a feel for what kind of candidate that they're going to be. And a lot of people said, "Oh, he's using these fancy words, and he's just trying to." It's like, I don't believe that. Ben says they feel threatened. That's why they won't come on. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just they don't want to address certain things. I mean, but it's not like I'm going to go, aha.
Exactly.
So you did this, or
I gotcha.
or like Maury Povich.
Right.
I have a surprise guest here. Gentleman says that he saw you over there. No, none of that's going to happen. It's like, but anyway, listen, thank you for coming on. And
always.
We'll have to do it again. I do appreciate you for that. Yes. Everyone, thank Mr. Roy Dos Santos. Again, condolences on the loss of your father.
Thank you.
And our thoughts go out to you. And we got to do this again. And I know you're good for it. If I call Roy tomorrow, let's come on tomorrow. Okay, he'll be here.
If I'm free, I'll
that's
be
how
on.
Roy is.
I think tonight you reached out to me, 3 hours ago or like 3 hours before the show?
Yeah, just real quick. It was on short notice, and, Roy's available like that. And I think that's awesome. I think anybody in government. And you know what? Trump was like that. Trump would have 4 or 5 press conferences a day to and from the helicopter, through the Rose Garden. He'll stop and just talk every day. I mean, he's talked 3 or 4 or 5 times a day. Mm-hmm. And now we get where we are now, and they're rushing him off. So he doesn't talk to anybody. I mean, thank God sometimes for good reason, but it's like you can't talk to anybody. This is the way it should be.
Yes.
Everybody, know your candidates. Know your candidates. April 24th is the first day of early voting. And then Election Day is Saturday, May 6th. So those of you in the area, in the Brownsville area, actually, the RGV is having elections all the way around. So get to know your candidate, ask the questions, and vote. If you don't vote, you suck. Roy, have a good night, man.
Likewise, Manny. Thank you. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.